Welcome everyone to a casted game for Age of Empires 4, and today spawning on the west side of the map playing in red, we've got Worm Retold, also known as beastyqt, playing as the Byzantines. And battling out against them today spawning in the southeast in blue, we've got Aoe4, playing as the English. Welcome everyone to Dry Arabia. Now a fascinating matchup, no doubt about it, two incredibly strong civilizations, and actually probably arguably two of the most popular ones. I think there are a couple that might, say they're in the mix as well. Maybe the HRE, but certainly the Byzantines and English, very much civilizations that a lot of people play on the rank ladder these days. And for good reason. They're pretty strong. You've got the English, of course, a relatively easier civilization to play. They've been around right from the beginning of Age of Empires 4, but the Byzantines are a bit more of a newer addition. The new civilization on the block, relatively speaking. Speaking of which, we will get new civilizations very soon in 2025. There's a new DLC planned. I believe it's new civilizations anyway. I don't actually know that for sure. I imagine it must be, but yeah, definitely a new DLC coming in 2025. I say definitely, but it's something the developers have announced as being on the cards. But an interesting matchup. Both civilizations do actually have a large focus on farms, or I guess in the case of the Byzantines, the olive groves. It's a bit different though, because the English get a faster rate of gathering of food and also the cheaper farms. Whereas the olive groves, on the other hand, for the Byzantines, they actually gather a very unique resource for the Byzantines. It's the olive oil. Incredibly powerful to get mercenary units nice and early. And it's going to be an exciting matchup. A lot of the times we see the English go for a second town centre and sometimes pivot towards a castle age afterwards. Can be a bit greedy though against the Byzantines that do have a relatively decent feudal age presence, even without too much of a commitment in terms of resources. All courtesy of the olive oil from the olive groves, and also the berries of course. Grants them the mercenaries, get some units in the feudal age to maybe put some pressure on, but also potentially defend against. And it's going to need to defend against a king from the English today. It will be the Grand Winery on the other side of the map for the Byzantines, a great landmark. I don't think we really see the Hippodrome all that often. At least not in the pro player level of the game, because of the fact that Grand Winery, it just offers so much. An extra 60% olive oil from the berry bushes and olive groves. It's incredibly powerful. Now I would like to say a very big thank you for everyone who's been supporting the channel, whether it be on Twitch or YouTube. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've really been enjoying casting Age of Empires 4 recently, and I think, you know what? Casting a game, or at least uploading a game every 2 days rather than every day, has actually really helped me out. I think it's made sure that I've focused on the very best games that we upload, but also means I'm not sort of running the risk of burning out as such. If anything, I've actually got a couple of videos lined up ready to go. And I would like to say, if you've been enjoying the content, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. More importantly, hit that notification bell, so they get a little bit of a ding-dong whenever I do upload a video every other day. He's going to go over to stone now here, Corvinus. So looking to get that second town centre relatively soon. Going with a good 6 villagers to get that up quick time. Now, one thing you may want to consider if you play as English is that you can actually get a town centre only taking the wood from the straggly trees. So if you take all the straggly trees, you'll actually have enough wood in order to afford a second town centre. There's Beastie's feudal age now in play. He does have that cistern. Of course, the economic building for the Byzantines, which, well, basically the economy revolves around this. There's an extra 10% gather rate on this, at least at water level 1. You can extend it by building another cistern, as you can see Beastie's doing right now, and then connect them up via the aqueduct system. That increases the water level, increases the village gather rate under the influence of the cistern, but also increases the production speed of military buildings. Now you can actually toggle this to other things as well. You could go for dialecticus, increasing the research rate, and also maybe praesidium, which reduces the building damage taken. It's often that we stick with the conscriptia though, in many ways. That's a lot of villages on stone. It's going to go for a third town centre. I think he just wants it quick time. It's a lot of villages to commit, 10 of them in total. He's going to go over to gold as well, prepping for a castle age after getting that second town centre. Now, I can imagine he's going to get the second town centre around about here. At least to protect the gold, you would have thought. We'll have to see. Yep, that is indeed the case. He needs to protect that gold so he can secure the castle age afterwards. But I'm kind of curious. Sometimes you can see a bit of a feudal age presence. It does feel rough, though, if you're trying to match up against the Byzantines going to the sort of feudal age aggression battles, because the Byzantines' economy scales incredibly nicely. Obviously, they start off with an extra 10% right off the bat. In fact, now it should be an extra 14%. Also bear in mind that whenever they seed an olive grove, they get olive oil from it too, which means more mercenary units. Speaking of which, we don't actually see a mercenary house just yet. Beastie open up with a stable and getting a couple of horsemen to defend himself with. Now, one thing to consider, although not necessarily always immediately apparent, you can actually get the mercenary house by the trade post, and that gives you special units. In this case, the Chukanu and the war elephant. The king gonna just dish out some damage. Bear in mind, the king can heal himself, right? So it doesn't really hurt him to take some valuable HP off the horseman, because you can always go back and heal up to the Abbey of the Kings. In fact, the king passively generates his own health as he is out of combat, which I think maybe he might be looking to do now. Although, bear in mind, the horseman can actually chase down the king. He does get a villager pick here. Nice pick off for Beastie and for Corvinus, rather. And I imagine Beastie... Oh, he's going to get a second one. That's pretty big. I think he does get it. He's got to be careful, though. I think in this scenario, the horseman might just chase after the king. I'm not too sure if this king survives, but getting 2 villager kills is certainly very valuable. I think he just stands and fights, and he will lose the king in the end. But he can always make another. Costs 100 food, 100 gold, and he traded it for 2 villagers and a bit of HP off the horseman there. But what he has done as well is forced the horseman to stay at home, which means that Corvinus can just boom away on 2 town centres. So the premise is here for the Byzantines is essentially to make some units in the feudal age, trying to punish the English. Once the English do get to the castle age themselves, well, the Byzantines won't be too far off. And the big thing about that is that really with the uptime for the Byzantines and also map control they're likely to have, courtesy of the units that they have on the map, they should be able to pick up the lion's share of the relics. We see 2 batches of longbowmen already queued up via the olive oil being spent. This is where it becomes a little bit tricky for the English, right? Made 1 unit, the king, which has now been lost. Now has to find a way to defend himself. He does have 2 town centres, of course. The English are very good at defending, but he might need to make some units, potentially here. Looks like he's going to go straight for a castle age. He's needing to seed some farms, and this wood line could be a little bit precarious. Oh, diving a bit too deep there, Beastie has to ride on out. But the typical horseman longbow combination for the Byzantines at the moment, and considering he's got map control, he can valuably take these berries, which is incredibly powerful. Not only is he getting him food, but it's also getting him olive oil for more and more longbows. Just forcing the idle time, and he might be waiting to pounce, right? Because there's going to come a time where, well, Corvinus has to commit villagers to building the White Tower. That could be a time for the Byzantines to actually jump on that. The question is, where will he place that White Tower? Quite possibly in between the 2 town centres. That could be a good spot by the wood line, potentially. We can see a lot of units on the field. 17 versus 1 so far. Siege engineering on the way. Yep, so Beastie really looking to punish this. It's going to be getting a Chirosyphon. Looking to do some damage, and why not? The only concern for Beastie is, of course, if the White Tower does go up without being able to do too much damage, then it becomes increasingly difficult to do damage, right? So he's probably going to have to go to the castle age himself. That's not necessarily a bad thing for the Byzantines, as we said earlier. Should be in prime position to pick up relics. There is the White Tower. Now, it's between 2 town centres, but he's got longbows, right? So he could potentially get some damage out of this. Beastie should be aware of this, so I wonder if he's going to go for it or not. He does have Iron Undermesh, which is an incredibly important upgrade. It says Wedge Rivets there because Iron Undermesh is already researched. But Wedge Rivets is the next tier of that. He's going to dive with a couple of longbows, it seems. He's going to pick off a couple of villagers. Not diving with a horseman. You can see the longbow is actually able to range these villagers. It's a big deal. He might dive in now. It looks like he will. That's the second villager to go down. Corvinus is going to suffer here, and despite getting to the castle, well, he eventually will get there, but he's going to suffer some villager losses, and that second town centre, although it made a lot of villagers, well, a lot of them just went down, and it's almost like it's reset, right? So Corvinus at 34 villagers versus the 33 for the Byzantines. Look at the army Beastie has on the field. It's got so much more. And that's a very important factor because, no, he's taking all the berries he can get off the map. It delays the olive grove transition. It means he makes even more units. And despite the English in the castle age, well, I don't think Beastie will be too worried about it. Sure, he can use the White Tower to produce units, but he's struggling because he's floating a lot of gold. The macro not quite on point here for Corvinus. He needs more wood. He needs more food, but he can't venture on the map to get food. It's too risky. Although potentially around here, he does have the palisades, so could potentially go for the deer camp, but you know, the English do love to get their farms. But it's an expensive transition, right? Maybe a market could be useful for Corvinus here. He needs to trade in, he needs to use that gold. He will be losing the Abbey of Kings. But behind all this, you can see Byzantines and Beastie, they're not committing crazily to the feudal age, rather. He's not sort of playing it an all-in play. Instead, he'll be slowly working his way to that castle age. Almost there in terms of the food and gold requirements. Needing 1200 food and 600 gold to get that. In the meantime, it's going to just burn some houses down, cause a bit of infrastructural damage, which is it's actually a big problem for Corvinus because he needs that wood for farms. But at this rate, he's going to have to replace those houses. Getting the hardened limit tonight, which will certainly be helpful, which is great against cavalry units. And the big reason for that is, well, sure, the English might try and go for man-at-arms, but first of all, it's going to take a long time to get there, and they don't have the greatest mobility, so again, it means more time for Beastie to be on the map, and also pick up those relics once he does get to the castle age. He has made a mangonel, so we'll look to start pushing some of these longbows off. He does hit. Oh, that's a lot of damage. Beastie suffered a massive shot there for the mangonel. Diving down the south and not able to pick off too much. Well, you lose a couple of horsemen, but it's caused a bit of idle time. Siphon burning some farms to the ground. Behind all this, the Golden Horn Tower is being built. And there's a knight on the field. But it's kind of crazy how much idle time this is causing, right? And not only that, it's causing Corvinus's macro to be a bit off, really. Horseman trying to take out the mangonel. Probably, I don't think he manages it. The villagers should be able to repair. Villagers getting some damage output themselves with the short bows. Takes out the horseman. Mangonels will clear up the long bows. And Beastie probably has to be happy with what he's done so far and just recuperate. He's going to lose the Siphons for sure, but it's getting some damage, right? That's for sure. He's going to take out the mills, taking out houses, taking out some farms. This is all key infrastructure that's going down for Corvinus that he has to replace. And he's probably going to want to rebuild or at least repair that farm, that mill. He's going to lose it otherwise. Hello, Corvinus. There we go. He repairs and he seeds another batch of 8. But look at this. Now that he's in the castle age, Corvinus. Well, he's been in the castle age for a while, but now that Beastie's in the castle age, I suspect he's going to make a monastery. Probably get some of those monks out to pick up those relics, which, by the way, he's got one secured nicely at the back of his base, and he should have a really good lead time on the relics on the middle of the map, because, I mean, ultimately, Corvinus, he doesn't have the resources for a monastery. He doesn't have the resources for a monk. He has barely enough resources to get his infrastructure back up and running again. Bear in mind, he didn't have any of the eco upgrades either. It was just a straight fast castle. Only double broadaxe coming in now, and also forestry. Whereas, of course, Beastie's had wheelbarrow, he's had broadaxe, and he's had the horticulture in for quite some time. There's that monastery. Now, the big thing from here is, of course, whilst Corvinus is on 2 town centres, Beastie will be looking to equalise that villager deficit, the eco deficit, by picking up those relics. Could potentially add in a second town centre himself. But ultimately, he's done so much damage, he's kind of forced the English into a really bad position, because being on second town centre, you'd expect to have a much healthier villager lead, and you need that because, I mean, Age of Empires 4 and RTS games generally are, you work with trade-offs, right? So what Corvinus is giving up right now is map control, is giving up resources off the map in terms of the berries that, you know, Beastie's been picking up. He's giving away the relics. In exchange for what? Well, it should have been extra villagers, but actually, he doesn't have all that many extra. Only 5. And of course, a lot of that's come down to the fact that Beastie's killed 13 of his villagers. He's now looking to wall up and play a bit defensively. Now, there is a timing here for the English, though. If they can get these farms online, get plenty of gold income on in, they can start to really mess up units, get some barracks, get some man-at-arms, and it can be a force to be reckoned with. But it's something that I'm sure Beastie will be aware of. He's got some crossbows already lined up to go up against, you know, heavily armoured units, making some Varangian guards as well, and he's really making the most of all the extra food off the map. And he's also getting houses on the map for the extra vision. It's actually a technology I think is very underrated. Has been nerfed recently, it's made a bit more expensive, but it increases the line of sight radius by 7 tiles. It gives them such huge vision. The reason why it's so important, it gives an early warning mechanism against the English cavalry. Beastie with 44 military, and would you believe 20 longbowmen, all paid for by Aoe4, of course. The Mangonel might get a shot off, but Shield Wall is an ability for the Limitanite, reduces the amount of damage coming in by 30% from range damage. Of course, it has to be deployed, but it does make them slower on their feet once it is deployed. Let's take a look at the armor composition here for Corvinus. Not many units, to be fair, but looks like he's going to go for crossbows of his own. Doesn't have any of the blacksmith upgrades as well. So yeah, fast castle for the English is very slow. You know, you don't really get that many units, especially against a civilization like the Byzantines, that can, you know, produce units, but also get to the castle age at a very solid timing. So solid that he's actually already picked up 2 of the relics, 2 more on the way, and the other one is right at the back of his base, so that's pretty secure as well. Looks like it's going to be a 5 relic game here for the Byzantines. Now there's a couple of options for the Byzantines, actually how they use the relics. You can actually place the relics inside the Grand Winery. And bear in mind, you can actually make monks from the Grand Winery, so you don't necessarily have to make a monastery as the first thing. You could just quickly queue up a monk and from the Grand Winery and get that out. Now, if you place the relic inside the Grand Winery, you actually accumulate olive oil from the relic income. If you place it inside the monastery, you accumulate gold. So it's looking to get those upgrades for the man-at-arms line. Looks like it's going to be man-at-arms crossbows, quite a typical army composition for the English because it scales really well to the late game. Considering the fact these English farms, when he does get to the Imperial Age, is likely to get, of course, enclosures, which gathers you gold as well as the food from the farms in the Imperial Age, and that, of course, supplies you exactly what you need to make the man-at-arms and crossbows, both units, of course, costing both food and gold. Quite a large chunk of army in the middle though, 61 military units. He's starting to fall back a little bit in the villager count, but of course, with 5 relics in the bag, that of course goes a long way to counteract that, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, Beastie adds in a second town set. It might not even need to, could potentially just get more cisterns, because of course, whilst he's behind on villager count, make no mistake, the difference isn't as big as you think. The extra gather rate by 14% goes a long way to bridge that gap. Speaking of bridging gaps, Beastie looking to bridge the gap that's between the 2 armies right now. Could look to charge this in. It does have a Mangonel, which has to be a bit cautious of, and it's quite important to have these premium units if you're the English and defending in this position, because that one Mangonel is, you know, it goes a long way to stop the Byzantine army just rushing on through, right? Does get one shot off. Gets a bit of a damage output, not huge amounts, but he does a bit of work there. So Beastie gonna try and harass some of these villagers. Should get a couple, maybe one, I'm not sure. Yep, there we go. Yeah, probably should get 2 in the end, actually, as it happens. Yep, 2 of them go down. And look at this. All 3 sacred sites have now been captured. All the mid-map objectives coming the way of the Byzantines. The 5 relics, the 3 sacred sites. And it's all because the English are having to play a little bit more conservative. But bear in mind, if Corvinus can survive the next 5-10 minutes, he'll be in a great spot. Like, he's got a good economy, and he's got the farming transition fully fledged. Although, having said that, you know, the olive grove transition is very much underway for the Byzantines as well. But the timer has been activated, so eventually we talked about, you know, whether the English can survive the next 10-15 minutes. I mean, he has to do more than just survive, right? The mid-map objectives, the sacred sites, mean that the English have to actually push out. And it's going to be hard because the Byzantines get some crazy outpost emplacements. The Mangonel placement is incredibly powerful. It costs a chunk of stone, 200 stone, 75 gold, but it's essentially a Mangonel inside. It's very difficult to punish, very difficult to stop once it's up and running. Now bear in mind as well, when we head towards the 20-minute mark, the gold in the middle of the map becomes a lot more important. There's 2 tiles that are 8,000 gold veins, which of course Beastie now has very much under his control. Now granted, the English can go for enclosures, but it's not really quite enough to sustain an Imperial Age army with all the upgrades and everything you need. So once he does run out of this gold at the back, Corvinus, it could become a problem, and to be honest, he might not even have enough gold to go to the Imperial Age, because he needs to make units, because he's going to be under fire very soon, quite literally, Greek fire. attacking from multiple angles here, Beastie. Going through the wood line. He's going to snipe a couple. There we go. 2 villagers at least. Go down 3, 4, 5. Oh, got 6. 6 in total. That was devastating. Going to get some more villagers around the back as well. He's killed 24 in total. Now, this is a bit of a distraction, right? It's forcing a lot of the English army backwards. Again, it means that, you know, essentially Beastie just has to buy time, right? That's all he has to do. He's getting the economy rocking and rolling. We're now out towards level 4. That's going to be 22% gather rate on these villagers. It goes, effectively, he's actually got more villagers working in terms of gather rates and everything together. It's pretty insane. Corvinus rebuilds the palisade walls and look to group up the army. I wonder if he can get a Berkshire Palace. Often we typically see them in the middle of the map, but of course middle of the map already occupied by the Byzantines. Yeah, there is that second town centre now for Beastie. Not quite sure when that went up, but I can't imagine it was there for too long. But what it means is that actually the extra villager count that Corvinus has, well, it's not going to be extending any further. Plenty of stone coming in. He's going to be able to afford some keeps in these strategic locations on the sacred sites. This is becoming increasingly hard for Corvinus to be able to challenge. As time goes by, these sacred sites are becoming more and more secure. English army moving out, led by the king. Moving out very slowly, though. That's one thing to bear in mind. The mobility for the English here, not all that great. And it's going to run into the mangonel emplacements. Oh, the timing on this. Oh, the keep. I don't think this goes up. I mean, not unless the army heads there. It looks like it will now. Corvinus will spot this. Might try and deny it. Now, there is a mangonel emplacement. It's being aggroed by the king. Mangonels, though, for the English. He will get a couple of shots off, but there is one springall for the Byzantines, so he'll slowly make work of this. Takes out the first mangonel. He's torching down the mangonel emplacement tower. But eventually, this keep might go up in the end, actually, as it happens. But that's a good number of longbows here for Beastie. Look at that, 55 longbows. Absolutely madness. All paid for by Aoe4, of course. And, well, there's heavily armoured units there on the front lines in the form of the English man-at-arms, but it just doesn't seem like there's quite enough. He's trying to get the outpost. He needs this outpost, Corvinus. He needs the network of castles bonus. He needs the attack speed. But look at this, just the sheer number of units. A couple of ringing guards, tanking for the Byzantines as well. Mangonel placements at the outpost. Looks like they keep... Unfortunately, this village has mostly died, but I imagine Beastie will send some more before too long. And yeah, unfortunately, Corvinus just doesn't quite have the numbers. He had to fight almost without... I mean, he didn't necessarily have to fight. He felt like maybe pressured to do so, to try and take that keep, but he fought without the network of castles bonus, which was actually a big handicap for him. It's a whopping 20% extra increase in attack speed for all those units within the aura, and of course he didn't have that really for the vast majority of that fight, as he now starts to add in plenty more archery ranges, looking to go heavy into crossbows most likely. Now 5 minutes are almost on the clock. He's building this keep. He's going to get one down the middle as well. The one down the south is being walled with stone walls. This is actually looking very viable for a, well, essentially a sacred site victory. Wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. He now looks to torch down the palisades, and he's going to try and break on in here. Wouldn't be surprised if he manages it. Couple of springalds. And yeah, I mean, the Varinga guards will torch this down very quickly. The question, I mean, ultimately, there's no reason for Beastie not to be aggressive, right? He's at 200 population. I mean, he could potentially go to the Imperial Age. That's potentially an option for him. It looks like Corvinus is opting for that himself very shortly. But certainly, Beastie should be in a good spot here. That's the thing. The English do love to stay at home, but there are some civs that can punish it very heavily, and certainly the Byzantines are one of those. Just going to head back with the units. Back to the stone vein. He's actually adding a couple of lands connected in there as well. And with that, well, the Berkshire Palace is coming up now for Corvinus. Actually on the northern sacred site just as well, because there aren't actually... Although I was going to say there aren't any units there, but you know what? They might be heading that way now, and this could be devastating. He could lose a lot of villages now. Corvinus is moving his army that way. Oh, this is really bad timing for Corvinus now. He is building with 48 villagers, so he will get it up in the end, but he will have to sacrifice some villagers for this. Bring in guards, go right for those villagers, and those longbows. They're in trouble. I mean, the Berkshire Palace will go up in the end, but he lost a significant chunk of the economy. And guess what? Beastie, he's going up to the next stage as well. Mangonel placement is in play. He's got to keep himself. So it looks like it's going to come down to all about this sacred site, which is kind of crazy to think about. Looks like the Byzantines have really put pedal to the metal on the mid-map objectives. And it just shows the power of the Byzantines. They've been able to make units, but also progress to the Castle Age, and now also progress to the Imperial Age. And it all, I mean, a lot of it, the tempo aggression that comes out of this civilization, the unit numbers, 60 longbows, guys. 60. Absolutely insane numbers. I mean, it's more than the English have at this point. In fact, the English have half of the numbers of longbows than the Byzantines. And it just shows you how strong the Byzantines can be. We shall see if Corvinus can deny the sacred site and then work from them. In the hyper late game, the English can do particularly well. But the Foreign Engineering Company, actually, as it happens, is a fantastic landmark. Look how many olive groves he's got here, Beastie. Can have mercenaries coming out of his ears. Of course, the second town centers meant that actually the recent losses in villages for the English meant that actually Beastie's economy is a lot better now. Stronger in terms of village count, but also it's got a whopping 26% gather rate on all of those villages. Only 2 minutes on the sacred site timer, so it's do or die really. Although to be fair, even if Beastie doesn't manage to hold on to the sacred sites, he has got a very strong position in this game. Second keep coming up as well, and yeah, Corvinus, he needs to really pack a punch. The biggest problem for Corvinus really is he doesn't have access to gold. And now he does have enclosures, which will certainly help him. But that's the key bit of detail, right? He doesn't have any access to gold. And look at this. These two longbowmen for Beastie. This is so important. Beastie recognizing that, well, gold is an issue in this stage of the game, and he's cut off all of the supply of it. Now, just a minute and a half or so. Corvinus has got to get going soon with this army. He has got a bombard, so he's going to slowly start to work on that Mangonel emplacement outpost. Probably a good place to start. But then he's got two keeps to deal with, both with boiling oil, and is actually getting the cannon emplacements as well as we speak. Now, it takes a bit of time, so a minute on that. So Corvinus has to delay it significantly for that to becoming relevant. Although 21 seconds on that one will certainly help. Bombard's slowly working on this. 2 trebuchets out for Beastie, and also some springals pushing away the bombard, forcing the bombard to pack up. But that Berkshire Palace range is working heavily on that springal. Now the question is, how much can the Berkshire Palace do if they're starting to engage in a fight? I mean, ultimately this is half health, so it's actually at risk of losing this Corvinus. It's not ideal. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to go for the forward production just to reinforce. Right options here, but he's got to go soon. Only 24 seconds on that sacred site timer. He's repairing the villagers, the bombard. And this keep is still up and running. It's got the cannon emplacement, as we can see. And this could be incredibly dangerous. Like, I mean, Corvinus has to go at some point, right? It's only 13 seconds. He has to stop the sacred site timer. But there's the the arrow volley from Beastie's longbows, peppering those arrows, taking so much HP off of those man-at-arms. And those man-at-arms barely able to stand and hold this forward line, this forward position. Looks like Corvinus, he's camped out in the sacred site, but I mean, the keep even has Mangonel placements as well. And this is an absolute disaster for Corvinus. He has to do something. He has to go on the sacred site. But it doesn't really look like it's going to work out for him. And there's just so many units there for BC. He's going to go on top of the sacred site with his longbows. We've even got a Mangonel, would you believe? Berkshire Palace has been working, but up against 2 keeps with Mangonel placements. And it looks like, it's looking like the Byzantines should be able to take this victory. He has to close it out. Corvinus is still making units, but he just doesn't have enough gold, he doesn't have enough food, doesn't have enough wood, doesn't have enough of anything really. And he's struggling to keep up the unit numbers. There is 17 military sacred site timer down to 5 seconds, and looks like the timer will go down to 0. Oh wait, he's got a couple of units still there, so a couple more seconds. But unfortunately, it won't be enough there in the end for Corvinus, and it will be the Byzantines that take the victory on Dry Arabia. beastyqt shows us how it's done, shows us how to stop the English, and it does it with a very powerful Byzantines. Hope you guys enjoyed this cast game, and if you did, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Take care, and see you next time.